I have some serious problems, but we won't get into all of those today. I haven't seen you guys in a few weeks. Well, you might be wondering why. Why, Mrs. Thomas, did you stop doing videos, checking in on us, your daily cup of tea videos? Well, I felt like were more important things going on in the world that maybe people should be paying attention to and spending time with, including myself. So I've been devoting some time to reflection, to finishing up the school year strong, and today is the last day, so I decided to come at you with one last video to say goodbye and leave you with some final thoughts and ideas. Life for me is all about continually growing and learning. That's what I love about it. I love learning new things. I love trying out new things, learning new skills, experiencing new places. I'm not as well traveled as I'd hoped. That was my dog, Darcy. You want to come out here, Dee? He's at the screen door barking because he wants to come out with me. Hold on. He wants to be with me right now. It's okay, I got it. There he is. You can probably hear him panting. You want to come say hi? Here he is. Yes, go lay down. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so that's kind of my life philosophy, I guess, if you haven't picked up on that. I'm also all about trying to find positivity, but not in those cheesy self-help book kind of ways, but finding the humor in things to kind of deal with life. And maybe sometimes it's not so appropriate, but it's just kind of my personality and how I've always been. It's easier to laugh sometimes than cry. Anyway, so I've been kind of focusing on just thinking about life in general and really trying to be there for students who need it and really give you guys that time and space to do what you need to do to be in a good spot. I was able to go into my classroom for one last time. I did that on Tuesday. Was able to clean up and pick up a few things. So one thing I picked up was this awesome mug that Anna gave me earlier this year, and I hadn't brought it home with me when we closed because I didn't know how long we were going to be closed. So now on our last day of Daily Cup of Tea, I finally have my grammar mug. By the way, I'm not too much of a crazy grammar Nazi about, about that stuff like some English teachers are, but I do love learning about our language and the rules of our language and communicating as clearly as possible. All right, so I have these stacks of books because I have a problem. I am one of those people that I go and I buy lots of books and I put them in a stack in my house and I will slowly read through the stack. That was a bee that almost just attacked me. So I now have this isn't all of them, by the way. And these are two stacks for a reason. This is what I've read since we closed, and you can't see all of them. Some of them I was in the middle of reading when we closed, and I finished them while we were reading. I've also finished a couple of audiobooks in addition to this. And then I've also read Frankenstein on my Kindle because that's what AP was reading. So I've read quite a few. I'm a very slow reader, and that's something that I've told some of you guys is that I'm a methodical, just slow reader. I'm not like the slowest, but I'm definitely not as fast as some of my friends who can fly through like a book in a day. I'm not that person. It's very rare that I could finish a book in a day. I would have to be reading probably the whole day or for 5 or 6 hours, depending on the length. Like this book that I'm currently reading, Dear Martin, I just started it last night. It's only 200 pages. If I sat down and read this today, I could probably finish this book today. I mean, it's not a problem. It's probably twice as long as Of Mice and Men, which I could probably finish in one day, in one sitting. The truth is I usually don't have that many hours to just sit and read. Some days I wish I did. So this is what I'm currently reading is Dear Martin. And it's about a kid named Justice who goes to a private school. He's Black, and he is incredibly smart. He's a good kid. He's an honor student. He has friends of all types. From what I've read so far, I'm still learning a little bit about him. But he did talk about his ACT and SAT scores early on. But early on in the book, he is put in handcuffs by a cop when he's just trying to help his ex-girlfriend get home when she's been drinking, and he doesn't want her to drink and drive. So he's just trying to help her out, and he gets stopped by a cop, and it's about how he's treated there. And I know it's going to go into more issues as far as policing and everything. So I'm interested in seeing how this goes and how much I like it or not, because I have read The Hate You Give before, and I'm just wondering how similar it's going to be, if it's going to pair well. It's something I probably, just knowing so far with the style, I wouldn't necessarily use an AP, but I think it would be really good with 9th or 10th grade English. I know that some schools use this as young as like 6th grade, because it's just one of those young adult books that can really branch across several different grades. Anyway, so that's what I'm currently reading. What I have read, I just most recently read Just Mercy, and I talked with most kids about this on our teams meeting. Most people are somewhat familiar with this, especially with the film that just came out recently and has been offered for free for you to watch online. So you can go look that up. I'm pretty sure the book's going to have way more detail than what the movie has. Most of the book, it takes up space with the story of Walter McMillian, who is a young man that is on death row for a crime he didn't commit. I mean, there's so much evidence, mountains of evidence, that he did not commit the crime that he's been put in prison for. And the author, I mean, you should know this is nonfiction, and the author's name is Brian Stevenson. He founded the Equal Justice Initiative, which is a legal practice that's dedicated to defending the poor, the wrongly convicted and condemned, those especially that are on death row. He's looking at the most vulnerable in our society. So he looks at teens that are on death row for things that were nonviolent crimes, or given life sentences for things that were nonviolent, or and he looks at a lot of like the neuroscience behind brain development for teenagers, and is it appropriate or not for us to give these adult sentences to people whose brains aren't even fully developed when they make these decisions. But it also deals with race, and a lot of his clients are Black and completely innocent of their crimes. And there are other ones that did commit a crime, but have other factors that should have been taken into account in their sentencing. So it's really interesting. He definitely has his own argument and opinions on the death penalty and on prison sentences and things, and has done a lot of work in our country to help change our prison system. And he has a lot about the history of our prison system and how much it's expanded into being really a money-making venture in our country, and how frightening that can be. So really good. I'm not sure how much the movie goes into that because I haven't watched it yet. I'm betting, though, it doesn't get into all those little details. Okay, so that's Just Mercy. This one was recommended by Mr. Lynch, who's across the hall from me, my brilliant friend. I've heard this has been turned into an HBO series. I really love the narrator's voice in this book, and especially her friend. So the main character, well, they grow up in Italy, in Naples, and the main character that's writing it, the narrator, she does pretty well in school and is kind of one of those high achieving students that pushes herself to do well. And this is a time when not all students like really continue their education beyond the elementary grades. This is taking place in the 1950s into the 60s in Italy, if I remember right, 1940. It's after the war, I know that. But her friend is kind of like this rebellious, really bright woman, and it's all about their friendship growing up and the kind of trouble they get into at times, and the antics and the drama in their neighborhood. And it's really fun read. I really enjoyed it, but it's also really well written. The voice is just really what pulled me in on this. And just when you think you know what's going to happen with these two women, it of course changes. So really good, and it's a series as well. And it left me hanging at the end where I want to read the next one, but of course I have this. Theyre They, written by a Native American writer, Tommy Orange, tells the stories of about somewhere around 10 different Native American characters that all weave together by the end. Really good. This is one I would actually consider using in book clubs in my classes, just to look at different perspectives and history, and just well written as well. The Power, I struggled through this one. It became highly recommended. It's a dystopian book where women have suddenly this power in their bodies of like electricity and being able to shock and kill people with it. And it's supposed to be like it was written in the future, but the people are looking back at the past. It's kind of weird, kind of like The Handmaid's Tale does that. So women get this power, and it really changes the whole world because, you know, women feeling disenfranchised and feeling overpowered by men, that suddenly the tables turn because they have this physical power. Why it took me a while to get into is because the first half of the book, it's switching between characters and it's not aligning yet. Like kind of like how Theyre They has a bunch of different stories. These ones you start to figure out some alignment earlier on, some names that pop up in a couple of stories. This one, it's not so much. It takes a while, and that's what I really struggled with. Once I got about halfway through to where the story started to align, then I got into it. So I really enjoyed the last half. The first half was a bit of a sludge for me. But if you like dystopian books and if you like The Handmaid's Tale, you might really like The Power. This one I read for work, so I won't talk about it. And it wasn't that great. Unfortunately, it's one of those where the description sounded better than what the book ended up being. All right, this one, Jason Reynolds, Long Way Down. This is my first Jason Reynolds book I've read. I have another one of his right here on my to-read pile. That's what this is. So this one's told in poetic form, but it is a story. So especially if you're somebody that has a hard time with the length of time a novel can take you, you might really enjoy this because it's poetic form, but it has that story. It's about a teenage boy who's Black, and his brother was shot and killed. And it's dealing with that. It's really him reflecting on everything as he's riding down an elevator. And so it's a cool concept. I think it's really relatable. I like this better than I like this so far. As far as comparing young adult books that I've read recently. I like this one a lot more stylistically so far. We'll see once I read all of that one. This one I read another dystopian book by one of my favorite authors, Louise Erdrich, which I haven't read all of her stuff. She's a Native American writer, and the novel I really like of hers I've read before this is The Roundhouse, which I think Mr. Lynch uses with UW some years. It just depends on the year. He always switches up what he does. But this is another dystopian that I was considering adding to my classes, and I think I'm going to. The main character is 26 years old. Her name is Cedar. She was adopted into a white liberal family. Her adoptive parents are very progressive, and she lives in Minneapolis. She finds out she's 4 months pregnant, but she knows that she has Native American roots, and she knows about her tribe that she comes from. And so what happens during all of this, I mean, that's just her life setup, but the world starts to have a panic and like a collapse, and there's issues with women getting pregnant. So it kind of reminds me of The Handmaid's Tale that way, but this is like during that shifting time. So it's a little bit different. So she tries to hide her pregnancy as best as she can because they're also rounding up pregnant women. There's some issue with the fetuses they're looking at. So there's a lot of fear going on. Anyway, and the father of her child also tries to help hide her from the government, from the authorities. And she's also dealing with her identity of being Native American, but not really being raised in it, kind of living a privileged life in suburban America. with her parents, and her coming, it's a lot of that, her finding herself and who she really is, and also thinking of her child and her pregnancy and trying to keep her child safe. So I really, really enjoyed this, and I'm hoping to use it next year for some of my students that want a different type of book for their dystopian choices in my 10th grade classes. Just got to find a way to get some copies of it. The last one I finished this right when we closed, is Shipbreaker. I think I told some of you I had finished reading it. Really good dystopian book for young adults. It's in the future. It takes place in the American Gulf Coast region. There is a lot of the world that's impoverished and just scraping by to survive, that they've created like these almost work gangs. And the main character, Naylor, works on one of these scavenging crews that just really strips metal from old tankers. So like these that you see on the cover. And just really meeting quotas just to get by, just to have food and a like meager roof over his head. His mom is dead. His dad is pretty messed up. He's a drug addict, and abusive. He was abusive to Naylor's mom, but he still has this weird relationship with his dad because he depends on his dad for like a place to live, which isn't much. It's like a little hut near the beach. So he's trying to survive, but one day he sees this massive, like super expensive yacht that's shipwrecked right by where he lives and where he works. And we quickly find out that there's an elite group of people in the world who have like all the money. They have all the wealth in the world and own all these companies that are benefiting from the work that people like Naylor do. And so this yacht belongs to the daughter of one of these moguls that owns a mega million company. So he decides to go there and finds this wealthy girl who survived and everyone else died. But there's more to it than that because she was being chased. And that happens pretty early on. So really good book as far as like entertaining goes. And it made me think a lot about power structures and wealth, the haves and the have-nots a bit. It doesn't get too preachy with that because it's a little bit more poppy. But I enjoyed it. Apparently it has some companion novels, like it's a series, but I haven't read those yet. All right, so that's what I've read since we really closed. So in the last couple of months, I also listened to Unbroken, which is the story of Louis Zamperini, it's a nonfiction book, by the way. It's really his story of him being this amazing runner. He went to the Olympics in Germany, in Berlin, before World War II. After World War II, during World War II, he enlisted in the military and he was in the Air Force. He ended up with his crew. Their plane crashed at sea and he survived and then was in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. So it's his story of his survival. That one was really good, really great one to listen to. I also listened to Trevor Noah's book. If you don't know Trevor Noah, he has a show on Comedy Central. He's from South Africa originally. Anyway, I read his autobiography book called Born a Crime. That one I listened to as well, and I'd highly recommend listening to it because he does talk in some of the native languages from South Africa. Like when he's telling stories and people say certain things, he talks a lot about language and how the benefits of him being multilingual in his country. So those are the ones I listened to. And then, of course, I read Frankenstein on my Kindle because I get it for free on there. So that leads me on our final episode to what I have in the stack to read. And some of these I've had for a while and some I just ordered recently. So I thought I'd share with you kind of like what I've been looking at reading. And none of them are really some of them are recent, but not all of them. So I have a bit of a mix. So I read a little bit about Emmett Till and know his basic story. And if you don't know, he's a young boy who was murdered in 1955. He was 14 years old. So I found this book online. It doesn't look too long, but I really wanted to read it just to have a longer account of what happened. It looks like a pretty easy one, like you might see in like a middle school library nonfiction book. So we'll see how it goes. I thought it would be more like a novel length or size, but that will be interesting to read. So I'm curious about any details in that I didn't already know. This one was recommended by Mr. Mybori, Girl in Translation. It's about a girl who immigrates from Hong Kong with her mother to America, and they don't speak any English. And they arrive in New York and live in Brooklyn in the Chinatown and work in the Chinatown in a sweatshop. And it's about her, from what I understand, her identity, who she is, and finding herself, kind of living between two worlds, of what she knew and who she is in America. So I'm really interested in reading this one pretty soon. I think this one will be one coming up soon. I've also heard a lot lately about what happened in Tulsa in 1921, the Tulsa Massacre. So I picked up this nonfiction book, ordered this one online, so I could read a long account about what happened to the Black-owned businesses and to people that were completely massacred in Tulsa on May 31st of 1921. It's also the place where this happened was the Greenwood District in Tulsa, and it was known as the nation's Black Wall Street. And really, it was a community built by Black Americans, one of the most prosperous in the United States at the time. We're talking 1921, so we still have lots of racism going on in the country long before the Civil Rights era, guys. So I'm going to read about this, what happened, and because I'm just curious about it. And I've read like small articles about it, but I'm going to go from there. This one I've had for a while that I've been told I should read. It's like a retelling of Cinderella. It's a young adult book, except instead of her being human, she is an artificial intelligence cyborg, something like that. I don't know. All I know is that she's tech. She's cyborg. So I'm interested to see how Cinder goes. But I've heard really good things about it. If you don't know, I like a lot of science fiction. Another one I've got, but I think this will be a really fast read as well, is Between the World and Me. This one's just been popping up on a lot of lists that looks at, I think it's nonfiction, and deals with race issues. And it's really the author is kind of like, it's like he's writing this to his son about his life and what it is to be Black in America. And so I really wanted to read that. So I picked it up. This is one by Jason Reynolds, the one that I read that other young adult book from. So this is just another one of his works, but this is an actual novel. And it's called The Boy in the Black Suit. I don't know. I don't remember what it was about. I just remember reading it when I bought it, and I was intrigued by the concept. So it says, even Matt's best friend wants to know what's up with the black suit. Matt's been wearing it every day since his mom passed away, but that's not why he's wearing it. He just got a gig at the local funeral home. Hey, don't judge. It pays a hell of a lot more than the cluck bucket. Sounds like KFC. Besides, his dad can't handle the bills, or anything really, on his own anymore. So while Dad's snagging up bottles of whiskey, Matt snags up $30 a day. Not bad, but everything else basically sucks. Folks say you don't miss something until you don't have it no more, and that's real. But then Matt meets Lovey. Yeah, crazy name. And she's been through more crazy than he would ever imagine. But this girl won't cry, even though she should. And maybe that's why Matt is so drawn to her, why he can't seem to shake her. Because she's tough the way he wants to be. I know, weird. So, young adult book. I was just intrigued by the concept, and I'd read his other book, so I wanted to read another Jason Reynolds novel. So, picked up that one. This is by one of my favorite science fiction writers, Ursula K. Le Guin. I've read all kinds of her stuff, but The Lathe of Heaven, from what I understand, is like her dystopian novel. So futuristic and a messed up world thing. So I'm not going to say much about it other than because I don't really remember much else about it besides reading the back of it. I just remember I was going through a lot of trying to find some new dystopian books to add to 10th grade dystopian unit. And since I saw she had one, I was like, I love Ursula Le Guin. I have got to read this. And then I'll see if it's appropriate for kids or I think teenagers would like it. Jesmyn Ward, she wrote something else I read. Which one of hers did I read? Oh my heavens. I know I read another Jesmyn Ward book. Seeing Unburied Sing. That's the one. And I have that one in my classroom, and it was really, really good. Like, it's one I would love to use in a book club thing. So this one is edited by her. It's not a novel by her. It is a collection of essays on race in America. And she's the editor for it, so she put it together. And the title for this is The Fire This Time, which is a play off of a collection of essays written by a very famous and influential author, James Baldwin, who wrote a collection of essays called The Fire Next Time. And his also dealt with race issues, but he wrote it almost, I think it's been 100 years? I don't know. I'd have to look when he wrote that. I'll say the wrong thing. I already did. So it's 18 different essays by different people kind of responding to these issues of race in our country, and even playing off of what Baldwin brought up with so long ago and reflecting on it today. So I was interested in this because I thought there might be some really awesome essays I could use in my different classes to get some discussion started, or that kids might be interested in reading about other people's perspectives. So this one I could probably pick up and read a little bit at a time. I don't know. We'll see. I also want to read James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time. I haven't read it. I've read other things by James Baldwin, but not that work. This is one I've actually had since late January, early February, I think. I read another, the autobiography of Martin Luther King Jr., and I ordered this at the same time because I've read a bunch of his writings, but not like back to back, not like a whole book cover to cover. And if you don't know, Dr. King has a lot of things he wrote. So this one I wanted to get because it's a lot of his major writings and speeches. So I wanted to be able to sit and just read all of them. Like, yeah, there's some in here that I've read before that I'll probably skim through, like Letter from Birmingham Jail. I teach that one. So I'll probably go past that one, but I want to read the other ones that are in here. So anyway, that's one I read. Another one that I can just read little bits at a time. This one still has the price tag on it from Costco. Of course, the sequel to The Handmaid's Tale, The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. So anyway, there's that. By the way, I was using Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale long before the show came out, and I was using it in my classroom with dystopian book clubs, and then I feel like everybody jumped on the bandwagon. I feel like I need to get some credit for that. But I'm excited to read the sequel and see what she did with that. I hear that the show influenced her quite a bit with Where to Go, so I haven't read that one yet. Last but not least, another incident that I keep hearing about with everything going on in the world is what happened in Rosewood, Florida in 1923, and very similar to Tulsa, where a Black community was targeted and pretty much destroyed by others. And so this one's called like Judgment Day, the ruin and redemption of a town called Rosewood. So I don't usually read a lot of like historical books or like nonfiction like that. I usually read a lot of memoir type stuff. So I'm trying to really stretch my I guess, the types of things I read, the genres I read, to just be more knowledgeable. Because that's, to me, like I said earlier, that's what life is all about, is learning and growing and learning new things. So you can probably sense a theme I have here because of recent events. So I've just been trying to find things that I'm interested in reading and educating myself with, and also stretching the types of things that I read and the authors that I read. I think that's really important to be consciously aware of those things. So anyway, those are my books. The ones I've read, the ones I'm going to read. This pile to read, there's no way I'll get through these this summer. These will take me probably at least through the end of 2020. But we'll see. I will plug through them because I'm doing grad school too, so that takes up a lot of time. If I wasn't doing grad school, it might be more realistic. But for me, usually in a year, if I'm reading a lot, I can probably get through 24 books in a year. So about 2 per month. That's a lot for me. I have friends that read like 100 books a year. I don't know how they do it. Oh, I do. They're faster readers than me. What else? Some of you I talked to in our last chats this week, and so we were able to say goodbye and talk about what you're doing this summer. So it was good to hear from some of you that have books that you're going to be reading, that you're going to be trying out. The other thing I'd suggest is if there's a book that isn't catching your attention and you just can't get into it, set it down and move on. You can always go back to it later. That's okay to do with stuff you read in your own time, because sometimes we're just not ready for something, or stylistically it's not speaking to us. I've had that before, and then I go back to that book a year or two later and it becomes one that I love and that I fly through, because we are all at different seasons in our lives, and sometimes books need to come into our paths at a certain time to really speak to us. Sometimes you just need to plug away and keep trying, and which is what we do in school. We try to get you to keep plugging away and finding ways for you to connect with what we're reading as a class. But especially when you're reading for your own enjoyment and edification, that, make those decisions. It's not the end of the world if you put a book down and say, I wasn't in a place to read this. And that sometimes happens with me. Like some of these books I've had around for a few months, it's because I wasn't feeling it. And so I just go through and look and make decisions then. So that's why I usually have stacks of books around my house. So I can choose whenever I need to. There's still a lot of stuff going on online with free audiobooks. So I'd suggest you guys still do that. Check it out over the summer, find some things to read. Some of you I know are going camping this summer. I'm going to be doing some of that as well. Trying to get away from, it seems weird since I've been away from society in quarantine. I want to get away from society even more, but I do love being out in nature. Call me a little romanticist or transcendentalist is more like it. But being out in nature helps me like calm down and focus, I guess, and recenter myself. All right, last thing, it's our tradition. I couldn't end this without this. Have I been talking for 30 minutes? I hope you fast forwarded through some of my book talks. Just kidding, don't do that. Rude. So the last thing, we're going to see if it makes me happy or not, or if it's something annoying. By the way, yesterday, my husband and I were at the store for some other stuff, and we saw a hot dog toaster. Yeah, my husband bought it. And we had hot dogs last night for dinner with the hot dog toaster. My son used it again for today for lunch. That was just a side note because it makes me happy. It kind of made me laugh. All right. My dog's over there in the shade, panting at me. All right, 14,000 things to be happy about. Let's see if it will make me happy. Flip to a random page. Right there, Darcy, is that it? Yep, he said so. Shallow bowls holding closely clipped blossoms. Oh yeah, that's kind of nice. Meaning they're not on long stems in a big old vase. You got like a little shallow bowl with it's just like a profusion of petals in there because they're just like the actual flowers in there. That's kind of nice. I do like the one right above it though that says tangerine beef and white rice. That makes me even happier because it's about food. I'm going to look at some other ones. Oh, this one. Opening an encyclopedia to a random page and reading everything on that page. I used to do that as a kid. My dad had a set of encyclopedias in the basement, and I would go down there and kind of like I'm doing with this book, I would read. Weird. I would randomly flip to a page, and yeah, I wouldn't read the whole page, but I would like randomly pick a topic really to read about. Now, granted, the encyclopedias I think were from like the 1950s, so I don't know how much they helped my overall education, but I learned lots of things. Anyway, find something to be happy about and have a safe summer. Make good decisions. May the force be with you. Don't be a stranger. Make sure you stop by next year if we can and say hi. And know that I will be thinking of all of you. And if you need anything, let me know. I'm finishing up grading. I hope today, maybe tomorrow if I have to, but wrapping things up and making sure I'm done for the year. So have a safe summer and see you guys next year, hopefully at the school at some point.